Welcome back everyone dito sa latest episode ng FYI, a voter education series, but for sure now it's gonna be more voter agitation. So speaking of agitation, let's start with our most behaved guest of all. Sir Ronald, thank you very much for joining our very respectable co-guest, Justice Carpio and Admiral Ong. At please wag mo ako tawagan na Christian or something. No room for error here. Because at least sila, pag tinawag kong Justice si Admiral, nagagalit siya eh. Tapos tinatawag kong Admiral, tuloy.
Ako nga, Father Llamas.
Oo nga eh. Wag muna tayo pumunta sa Vatican, Sir Ronald. Let's start with you. Kamusta yung status ng bangka ni Aimee as of this taping? Gumagalaw, lalong lumulubog?
Well, una naman kasya sa dalawang ilog. So, nireject siya ng dalawang ilog. No? At naiwan siya, namamangka sa lupa. No? Ngayon, mismo yung lupa, lumubog na. Kaya I doubt kung makakaahon yung bangka niya.
Yes.
No? Multiple metaphors na yung ginamit ko.
Medyo mixed eh. Hybrid.
Kaya, well, nakakalungkot na yung presidential sister ay parang improbable. Hindi ko sinasabing impossible, pero improbable na manalo dahil sa kanyang wrong tactics and strategies. No? Hindi ko alam kung sino yung kanyang advisor. Pero dapat hindi lamang niya sisantihin. Dapat ipakulong niya.
Sa pagkaalam ko, Sir Ronald, may nagsisialisan sa isang campaign. I won't be surprised. Baka kung wala na siyang advisor, basically.
Or pwede niya i-hire yung PR troll company na hinire ng Chinese embassy.
Pag-usapan natin soon. Inagawan mo naman ng tanong yung mga kapitbahay mo. But going back to the Senate race, like, this is wild. It looks like 9 people are competing for basically the last slot. Si Bam slightly nag-improve at least sa Octo survey. Kiko is basically still there, but Philip Salvador is very much now in the contention, and Mark Oleta is just knocking on the.
Pero hindi ko maintindihan yung mga surveys eh. Malalayo sila sa isa't isa.
Hindi na siya.
Latest yung WR numero. Ang layo dun sa ibang surveys.
Kahit sa Octa?
Oo, medyo malayo. Kaya una yon yung differences sa mga surveys. Ikalawa yung dissonance within the surveys themselves. Yeah. Halimbawa, may isang survey na 2/3 ng those surveyed agree na dapat talagang kasuhan at si Digong ng ICC. Nandun din na almost 2/3 dapat talagang ma-impeach si Sara. But in the same survey, ay 59% ang approval rating ni Sara. In the same survey. So, ano yung dissonance? Siguro bobo lang siguro ako. Pero may mga ganong contradictions yung ibang mga surveys.
Ang mas hindi ko maintindihan is paano tumaas yung satisfaction rating kay Sara compared sa last year. Kasi last year may trabaho pa siya. Ngayon, basically, wala siyang ginagawa. So, satisfaction saan?
Well,
sa kanyang travel.
Pinag-usapan natin dati rito, tightening, consolidation ng kanilang base.
Yeah.
No? Tightening. Hindi naman siya nakakakuha dun sa mga undecided, sa pink, at saka sa BBM. So, nagko-consolidate lang basically sila. Ang sabi dyan ni Ronnie Holmes, it's not a surge. It's a consolidation, tightening. So, hindi ganun kadaling ipaliwanag yon in so short a time. So, pwedeng later sa ibang mga podcast natin, discuss natin.
Yeah, dun sa next na less respectable, ito respectable. But speaking of respectable, Justice Carpio, I mean, we were talking about Ateneo surveys and like, you're from Davao, kamusta mga Duterte from your reading? They seem to be doing still okay, considering everything. Last time we were here, we had the de facto press conference as Duterte was being, ano ba technical term? Arrested away? Ingat na ako eh. Even with away, I'm not using. Ano, Justice?
Well, the recent survey in Ateneo de Davao, the Dutertes are winning by a wide margin. So, I don't know if it's a failure of Jesuit education or it's just the...
Failure of education per se. Kasi yun ang concern natin sa failure of education system per se.
Yeah. But it's very strange that all the Dutertes are winning in a survey, in a mock election in Ateneo de Davao.
Supposedly the most progressive,
the
highly
most progressive
educated,
and most liberal, no?
Yeah, liberal, yeah.
Baka mali yung ating assumption.
About...
Most progressive.
Baka mali tayo kay Duterte. Baka he's progressive. We just don't know that. Ikaw, Admiral, kanina over lunch, you were asking us, di ba? Like, baka, are we missing something about... What is your read, Admiral, from a... I don't know, from a military standpoint, the fact that the Duterte people are not doing only well in Davao, but if you look at at least one thing common in all surveys is Bato and Bongo are doing very well, right? I think napapunta na tayo sa exciting
Yung isa
part.
lang itanong mo kay Admiral ay bakit si Kerubin at saka si Gringo ang in-endorse ni Digong at saka PDP Laban? Hindi si Camille at saka si Aimee na in-endorse ni Sara.
So may split na rin in the House of Duterte.
Saan ang gagaling yan? Saan ang gagaling?
Meron ba tayong masabi sa military wing?
Consistent naman si
Digong.
President Duterte. He's also been trying to incite the armed forces at yung security sector to his side. Then, nare-reinforce ni Sara in her statement. So, I think this is a strategic move. He's courting the military pa rin eh. Hindi siya nagbago ng playbook na yun. So, this is a strategic play on his part, courting the military through yung dalawang...
But do they have residual influence on the armed forces or ano lang yan? More like Hall of Fame collection trophy?
It's them eh. Baga mindset na nila yan eh.
Yeah. And since last time we talked, do you think Duterte is making inroads within the military? All of the agitation, all of the concerns we had with the military back in the day?
Well,
Nag-die down na ba? Or...
At the end of the day, yung professionalism naman yung ano dyan eh. Yung sustain nun eh.
Yeah.
Iba yung personal political feelings mo.
Iba yung
versus
institutional.
what you need to do as part of an institution. Okay. But they're trying to play around with yung personal yung personal feelings ng mga kasundaluhan.
Sir Ron, I'll go back to you kasi mamaya na lang we'll consult our legal advisor. We don't want to be libelous, but speaking of dissonance, surveys say ayon ang tao ng mga pro-China candidates. Okay, let's put it even nicer.
75%.
Surveys say they like more patriotic candidates.
Yes.
And yet, you look at yung mga matataas sa Senate race, to put it mildly, like either they were very close to the former president who was very questionable in terms of his take on the West Philippine Sea, or they were very quiet until recently yung siya nagsabi na handa na siya magpakamatay sa West Philippine Sea, yung ganyan. Like, how does that make sense? Is it because hindi na-connect ng dots or hindi na-connect ng dots? Like, other candidates are not attacking some of these candidates who could be accused of being allegedly pro-China, right? Parang ang bait ng mga candidates eh. No one is attacking anyone in the way they should.
It's a failure of messaging.
On whose part? Other candidates, everyone?
Nung mga kalaban itong mga pro-China na ito. Dahil hindi na na-indicate itong 75 to 90%, depende sa survey, na ayaw sa China. No? At hindi iboboto yung mga pro-China candidates. Ibig sabihin, hindi yan na-indicate dun sa mga pro-China candidates na ngayon nagpapanggap na hindi sila pro-China. No? So, yun yung doon naman yung dissonance, doon naman yung failure.
Oh.
Na maitikit
Ito
sila.
distance naman, communication gap.
Maitikit
Yeah.
sila. At kaya mahalaga yan. Hindi ko alam kung magagawa yan within the next 12 days ng campaign, no? Pero sana ma-dramatize yan eh. No? Alam ko, isang coalition ng anti-China, yung atin ito, ay
Civil society.
lalabas talaga ng konkretong list ng mga pro-China. No?
Hindi ba libelous yan, Justice?
No, that's part of election.
Free speech.
You can do that?
That's
Ayun
free
pala eh!
speech.
Pangalanan natin! Okay,
Okay.
yung mga... Kasi kahapon, yung mga
Free
guests puro
speech.
takot eh.
No? At saka kaya patunayan yan.
Sir,
Oh,
you wanna get the ball rolling, Sir Ronald?
Bongo and Bato are pro-China. No? Aimee is pro-China.
Okay lang, Sir.
Oh,
yes.
Okay ha, pag
That's very
nakasuhan
clear.
kami ha.
That's very clear. No?
Kahapon, puro takot yung guest natin eh. Wala. Sabi ko, okay, relax lang. Free speech, free speech.
Hindi lang. Kung ikaw ay isang journalist, ay dapat may mahaba kang pila ng libel cases naman sa'yo.
Medyo, I'm not sure.
Kung
Kaya
wala-
nag-podcaster
To be credible.
Kaya nag-podcaster lang.
Kung wala kang libel cases, mahina ka.
Pero ikaw, Sir Ronald, marami kang libel dapat, pero kahit hindi ka journalist, paano yan?
Hindi, parang sa akin, damay ako sa'yo. Yung, toxic masculinity.
Ayan na naman
Hindi ko
tayo.
nadamay, no?
Let's be clear ha, nauna yung name mo, Ronald Heydarian Esguerra. So, let's just be clear.
Damay lang yun.
Damay. Justice Carpio, since hindi naman libel yung ginawa ni Ronald, Ang concern ko naman, hindi freedom of expression, freedom after expression ang concern ko. But, Justice, how do you see this na parang we have 9 out of 10 Filipinos saying we have to take a tough stance on West Philippines, paano panidigong, almost 8 out of 10 saying we want patriotic, hindi pro-China, and then biglang titignan mo, even yung mga survey na binabash mo, more or less same din yung ranking na parang, wait, bakit parang ang taas ng mga ibang kaibigan natin? Dahil ba sinabi ni Bato na handa na siya magpakamatay sa West Philippines?
Well, nobody explained why they're
Pro-China?
They're
As
pro-China.
seen as pro-China,
Yes, nobody explained.
But nobody was calling them out.
Yeah.
Why kaya? Takot din sila malay pala.
Well, tinanong ko si Senator Francis Tolentino the other day, bakit ang linaw-linaw ng posisyon ng mga mamamayan against China, pero halos walang senador, no, na bumabanat sa China. No, halos wala. Especially even with the administration slate.
Yeah.
Pagkatapos banatan ni President BBM yung mga Duterte of being clearly pro-China, bakit yung kanyang slate hindi sinusundan yung kanyang banat? Ang sabi ni Senator Francis Tolentino, without equivocation, dahil takot sila sa China.
Oh, wow.
Takot sila. Halimbawa,
Now, i-operate sila ng disinformation?
Ang isang primary platform ngayon sa social media is TikTok. Sino ba may hawak ng TikTok?
Right.
So, China. Takot sila siguro na mabanatan sa TikTok.
Ako nga, naban ako ilang beses. Yeah.
Hindi ka naman takot eh. Saka hindi ka naman kandidato. Saka kahit kandidato ka, hindi ka naman mananalo.
Naman tayo. Sir Ronald, I will hold you to that. Balikan kita yung magkita-kita tayo sa 2028.
Pag ikaw ay nagsubok tumakbo, tatakbo na rin ako.
Pero lately, si Senator Tolentino lumabas na against China.
Yes. Paano? Dapat
too
lumabas
late.
siya earlier eh.
Yeah, too late.
Too late eh. Layo na niya eh.
Magpakabait muna tayo sa China bago tayo tumakbo, no? Parang TikTok account
Wala,
na.
ikaw, ban ka na nga sa China, no? Hindi ka binigyan ng visa.
Then nag-apologize naman sila. So, I'll see you in Beijing soon. No, but Justice Carpio, going back to you, again, like, kasi I've seen some surveys, including consumer sentiment surveys, so corporations na ito, hindi na ito mga survey agencies lang. Up to 21 to 25% of voters actually make the decision on the election day. So we still have time, right? Or something should be done in the final. What happened to the COMELEC debates? Di ba dapat may COMELEC debates yung mga senador? Like, what's going on?
Wala yata nag-attend eh.
Ayan tayo eh. Kaya puro pa-cute na lang nangyari. Food vlog na lang lahat, di ba? Like, so what should happen? Ano ba nangyayari dito? Natawag. Ikaw, Justice, like, what should happen in the final days of the campaign to call out what some see as lack of patriotic credentials or something?
Well, I think what Tolentino is doing is correct. He's now saying that China is an issue in this election. And that's the only way he can recover, but maybe it's just too late, no?
Last 2 weeks?
Last 2 weeks.
Ang usapan niya sa last 2 weeks is machinery. Hindi na yan market.
Although the Gen Zs they could be, a bit more protean in terms of, we still have no proper data on Gen Z to make a decision.
Yes.
Kasi exit polls, walang exit polls.
Election pwedeng dominant ang social media. No?
And,
Pwede.
and TikTok and Gen Z.
TV pa rin ang TV pa rin ang buhos ng mga ads. Hindi pa rin social media. Kaya tingnan natin. No? At the very least ay significant player ngayon ang social media sa election.
Very significant. I've seen
dominant or not is another thing.
Well, I've seen surveys again by very big companies. This is internal survey for their own CEOs and all. Actually, ka-level lang ngayon ng influencers ang news media. Basically tied. In fact, 1 point ahead pa ngayon. This is especially for younger voters, like Gen Z and TikTok. They don't watch us on TV. They watch us somewhere here or on TikTok. If China allows it.
Kaya maraming influencers ang maraming pera ngayon eh.
Na hindi tayo kasama, di ba?
Kinabayaran ka na YouTube, kinabayaran ka ng Facebook, yung iba may mga ads, no, etc. So, at kanyan, walang tax yan. No? Walang tax yan, no? Kaya...
They may double taxation. So, meron kang automatic tax deduction from the Google and all of that. And then here, you have to pay again. But
Pero
just
how do you do that? Parang Ang hirap yung monitor
No, there's a way. You can see from the views. You can make a rough calculation. There's a methodology.
So, nagbabayad ka ng tax?
Yeah, double tax.
Talaga?
Not only once, but twice.
So, mataas pa rin yung sahod mo. Kahit
Mataas yung buwis eh. Kaya medyo hindi pa tayo highlight. Ano ba? Canadian lang ba yung brand natin?
kaya pala may Hortons na eh.
Admiral, Admiral, balikan natin. Hindi, ito may mga tayo, mga partners tayo institution. Admiral, medyo na-booking na no, yung isang embahada dito ay nag-hire na ng quote-unquote troll farms. Hindi ba nakakabali? And this is a sign that we could have direct influence operations or election interference. Should we be as worried as Taiwan and some other countries na even yung baka ma-hack yung election mismo? Kasi sinasabi ni Sir Ronald, baka takot yung ibang candidates, hindi lang baka ma-shadow ban, hindi lang ban, shadow ban pa yung mas nakakatakot sa TikTok or but you know, targeting ka pa on the day of elections na different machinery might be at play. What is your read on that?
Meron ba tayong capacity, Admiral, to mitigate that?
Or are we even preparing? Are we in the zone?
Ang ating military at saka meron ganyang klaseng mga di ba? Mga
Cyber.
Pero at the end of the day, ang target niyan is yung ordinary
Voters. Yeah.
ordinary voters, ordinary Filipinos. So, it can be from the supply side or the demand side yung approach mo.
or both.
Ang solution talaga, long term niya, would be education.
So,
Kaya yung ginawa ng Taiwan.
2035 election, baka matino.
Ayun na eh.
Ayoko na long term na to eh. Medyo baka di na tayo tatagal yan, Admiral.
We have to understand na as
Matagal
far as
ayusin yan.
yung ating hidwaan with China, yung ating 2025 and 2028 elections are battlegrounds for influence.
Yeah,
Unless
exactly.
we accept that, then half-hearted yung natin, yung countermeasures natin dyan. So yung possible hacking, that's a technical I leave it to our side.
Short term na yan, yeah. Pero yung resilience of
But
population.
the battle for influence, andun yan. Now, if they cannot solidify a pro-China, which is I think impossible kasi yung needle talaga, 87-90% distrust China eh. So,
But 60% trust.
you mentioned kanina yung 75%. But
Right.
it went down from 78%. 70,
Interesting.
From 78 naging 70. So, bumababa siya. That means
Troll farms work.
nagtatraction sila.
Troll farms.
And I think yung class E yung tinamaan, doon bumaba yun eh. So may konting traction yung influence operation.
Alam ko may
Pero
geographic
di
din,
ba,
di ba?
Admiral, we have to treat this as to paraphrase Karl von Clausewitz. This is war by other means.
Yeah.
Parang ang arena ngayon ng battle ay social media. At parang hindi pa tayo nakakaabot sa ganung level.
Yeah.
Na ito ay gera. Di ba? We are not only being invaded physically, we are being invaded internally through social media.
Software, soft
This is more
invasion.
insidious kasi ang target dito is yung moral will to fight
Yeah.
ng Pilipino or moral will to resist. The best way they can do that, yung pinakamadali is, as I said in the previous natin, simply divide the Filipinos. Pag-away-away sila. That they can already claim victory if napag-away-away tayo. Then imbis na katutok tayo sa West Philippine Sea or any potential problem sa Taiwan, ang tutok natin yung sa isa't isa eh. Which is, yun actually nangyayari ngayon.
Even some of the candidates or, I mean,
Hindi, nakatutok tayo ngayon. Yung sinabi ni Sarah na isasaksak niya yung mansanas sa bibig ng kanyang mga detractors hanggang
Ayun.
mamatay.
ay, medyo,
Yun yung sinabi niya. Very graphic eh.
very,
Diba, the
no?
other day,
I didn't know Sarah is so literarily gifted, no? In fairness, like I really like yung mga
At sanay ako makipaglabanan sa kanal.
Yung mga metaphor
ginamit niya,
niya.
medyo ang tawag ko dyan, kanal politics. Hindi nag-got kanal politics. Justice, as a resident Davao expert, I'm so sorry, Justice, for doing this to you. What is your read on this, China alleged influence operations and also the fact that parang ilang taon na tayo just is working together to raise awareness on. I think we've been successful in a certain way, but there should be more to this, right? Like yung education system natin and ang problema. Yeah.
I think we have been successful because at least 80% to 90% of the Filipino people want the ruling asserted, want to defend the West Philippine Sea. Ang problema natin, how to relate that to elections.
Getting the right candidates, getting the right leaders. Yeah,
hindi
doon
na.
tayo
Because
problema.
we've not been working on that.
Yeah.
We've been fighting China and raising the awareness of the people against China, but not with respect to
Pro-China candidates.
To candidates.
Yeah,
Yun ang we did not touch that eh.
Plus there are other issues na in an election mas relevant. Jobs, inflation, unemployment.
But you can never compete with that, right? Unless i-connect mo yung West Philippines issue sa food security. Sabihin natin, yung presyo ng galonggong. You know, like, you kind of make it more either gut issue or heart issue.
But who's doing that?
No, tayo lang nag-usap. Like, I mean, like, hindi nga tayo kandidato nga eh.
Yeah.
Hindi nga tayo kandidato. We say more on these
Those
things.
running for election should be the one making the case for that.
Yes, the ones running should make it an issue, but they did not make it an issue. Ngayon lang si Tolentino Senator Tolentino. Too late.
Well, Tolentino was like the Ronald Llamas of Duterte, right? He was the political
Yeah,
affairs
because
secretary.
Tolentino has a good claim because he was the author.
Trajectory.
He was author of the Maritime Zones Bill.
Yes.
Tamang-tama siya, but he did not use it.
Ginamit niya yun as a campaign peg.
Yeah.
Diba?
Oh.
Lalo na, alam niya, 80 to 90% ay sang-ayon doon. 80 to 90% ay talagang critical at saka kalaban ng China. So, hindi ko alam ba,
Yeah, I was expecting him to use it, but it's too late. He's using it now only, too late.
Or baka hindi nagre-resonate or hindi, like, ikaw, Admiral, like, what is your read? From other countries, kasi sa Taiwan, right? Yung DPP will openly call Kuomintang as pro-China party. Like, grabe, or sa Korea, di ba? Yung talagang lantaran, ikaw ay North Korea, di ba? Like, yung mga conservative, they called
it's
others.
an election issue.
Yeah, they're talagang...
Sa atin, hindi natin ginawang election issue.
Well, it
At
was
least hindi
supposed
pa.
to be.
At least hindi pa.
Pero the candidates didn't. Like, all of us, journalists, pundits, we were all saying these elections could be a West Philippines China issue. And then suddenly, nothing came from the candidates. Even yung mga pink candidates. I don't know, what did Kiko and Bam say on West Philippines? Food vlog lang nakikita ko sa kanila. Yung nag-ano ng sabaw. Nag-ano. I mean, maybe from their logic, playing safe is also helping them because Bam is doing well in surveys. Kiko is kind of there with
Hindi
the...
ko pasukan yung logic dahil baka saan na naman tayo maabot eh.
Heraclitus. Abot tayo kay Heraclitus. Sir Ronald, I mean, I don't know why you bring Heraclitus in any conversation. But Justice Carpio, like, how worried are you about these elections not putting enough of patriotic people, or just to put it even more brutally, getting too many wrong people into the next Senate, and then maybe even setting it up for a potential return of a more pro-China faction in Malacanang by 2028? Like,
Well, I'm worried, no, because I thought that the West Philippine Sea will be an election issue.
Yeah, we all thought,
And we prepared for that. We explained to the people. So it was up to the candidates to use it, but they did not use it. Yun ang problema.
Talaga may problema. Dapat tayo ng candidate sa Ronald. Kahit matatalo
Hindi nga
tayo.
yung sabihin ko, pinapaliwanag mo na yung mga pundits.
Nagkamali tayo. Dapat nag-candidate tayo.
Issue na yan,
Yeah.
no? Pero walang kumuha. Kaya, kayo na lang ang tumakbo.
Para sa'yo, kung tatakbo ka rin. So, basically, lahat tayo.
Campaign manager mo ako. No?
Malaking bayad mo eh. Alam ko malaking ano mo eh.
Puro tibay nga ako sa question.
Admiral, going back to this, there is also the Taiwan issue, right? Hindi lang ito West Philippine Sea. I think because of the Taiwan issue, naging mas high stakes ito sa mga Chinese based on my conversation with them. Parang mas talagang ayaw nilang, wala silang room for flexibility on that. And the fact that the Philippines it could host another Typhoon missile, the fact that some of our Balikatan exercises as we speak could be oriented towards the Bashi Channel, China may have even more interest in making sure our domestic politics move in in a certain direction, and more interest in influencing LGUs, right? Yung LGUs, yung soft underbelly natin, or backdoor, as Ronald would want to put it, right? How do you see that angle,
And
making things more
President Marcos
intense?
up the ante when he signed that resolution or yung document about allowing government officials to actually visit Taiwan, except for the president,
relaxing the
vice president, the foreign and defense ministry. So there is a play actually for increasing yung collaboration or at least increasing yung engagement natin with Taiwan.
Lalo na, may 250,000 tayong OFW
Yeah.
in such a small place.
And you have to get them out safely. At the same time, Like, if there's gonna be a war, bobombayin tayo ng China, di ba? Like, they're not gonna wait for us to make a decision whether we're gonna be neutral. They're gonna suppose we're gonna help the Americans, right? So might as well.
Well, nandun yun. I mean, that's the end of the spectrum if they go kinetic. No? Pero as I said earlier, in the early discussions, they don't have to do anything physical sa Philippines. Eh. They just need to actually create a distraction para we just focus on our domestic issues.
So they don't even need the next Malacanang faction to be their guy. They just need an unstable and weak
They
administration
don't
in
need
charge.
to succeed. They just need to keep us destabilized.
Right, right.
So even if hindi sila makapush ng candidate nila for 2028, but hindi kumbaga it disrupts policy making and yung focus ng government. That's the best they can do.
Yeah.
Win pa rin sa kanila.
And on that score, we're not doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is where influence operations
Yeah.
actually is headed out.
Hindi naman tayo kasi military threat sa China. Even kahit,
Not directly.
kahit ma-multiply 10 times yung Typhoon missiles natin, it's more perception that we can attempt to defend ourselves. Pero in a real war, that won't last 10 minutes. No,
Well, no, but if it's part of a
Busyo
bigger,
na, in a real war.
integrated missile system, then it will matter.
China, ang effort ng China is to isolate us diplomatically. And I think to some extent yun yung effect niya is
Yeah.
yung relations natin with the rest of the ASEAN member states. So, kaya
That's true,
kaya
yeah.
sila nakafocus sa atin in terms of actually harassing us to the point na extreme na yung actions nila is to make us an example. Kasi ang worry nila, we will be influencing our neighbors to actually rise up against China.
So we're the chicken to the monkeys. Parang kill the chicken to scare the monkeys. Parang ganon, yeah. Actually, I was hearing from our friends who were in Singapore recently. Some of my good friends in Singapore are calling Philippines troublemaker. Lee Sheng-lu last year before he stepped down, he was almost like blaming us for the tensions there. Ikaw, Justice.
I was in Malaysia last
Oh yeah,
month.
given na yan. With Anwar and all. Like, given na.
Kausap ko yung mga high government officials.
I don't wanna
doon.
even talk about it.
Sabi ng isang minister, as far as we are concerned, the only tension in the South
It's
China
you guys.
Sea is between China and the Philippines.
And we're just the US. We're like the deputy sheriff of US in the like parang in ASEAN, parang ganun. Justice, next year we're gonna be the ASEAN chairman. How do we balance this? How do we make sure we're not isolated? How do we make sure we leverage? And at the same, how do we make sure we prepare the Philippines for this? You said generational challenge. Again, it could like the next 5 to 10 years could be very tense.
Especially
and difficult.
now, Justice, that China is pushing for the code of conduct na hinaharangan nila for several years. So ngayon, medyo ini-scale up nila. So para
Kunyari.
tingin ko, lalo tayo ma-isolate.
Well,
At kinagat ni Manalo. Sinabi ni Manalo, we're gonna
well, I
engage
think
that.
China is really not interested in a code of conduct because Vietnam wants the paracels to be included and China will never agree.
Yeah.
We want the Scarborough Shoal to be included, we want the arbitral award to be included, and China will never agree. And all of us want the code to be legally binding and China doesn't
And
want it.
ASEAN is by
Yeah.
consensus.
So, wala talagang mangyari eh. So, China is just dragging this
For propaganda level.
for propaganda lang that let us decide this, settle this issue in accordance with UNCLOS, in accordance with international law. Pero they're the ones violating UNCLOS, they're the ones
Yes.
violating international law. So, talagang they're just playing us...
Tagging us along, yeah.
So, what do we do when we get the chairmanship? Well, we know that Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar will always be for China, and the ASEAN operates by consensus. So there will be no consensus. We can do a little small grouping, coalition of the willing. You have Vietnam and probably Malaysia, but Malaysia
Malabo rin,
malabo
Malaysia.
rin.
I don't see with
Only
Anwar.
Vietnam really.
Your friend.
Yeah, Vietnam because but Vietnam has a problem. They have a long border with China.
Yeah.
And
their economy is totally
yes,
tethered
totally
now.
dependent. They're
French
the transshipment point. So, well, that's the way. That's why we have really to get more security relationship with other countries. No, we have a visa forces agreement with all other countries outside of ASEAN.
New Zealand, Canada,
And Trump
France.
isn't helping any. His reciprocal tariff is creating more discontent among ASEAN countries.
Sir,
Even
yeah.
Singapore, na
Oh, yeah.
pinaka-dependent
Lawrence
sa,
Wong had
sa
a
US,
very
you know,
strong, yeah.
are very critical ngayon kay President Trump. So, parang tinutulak ni Trump yung mga countries sa ASEAN palapit sa China more and more.
Especially
no?
Vietnam, 47-48% tariff. Is there a way we can end this episode on a nicer, more optimistic note? Starting with you, Admiral, bago ma-depress yung audience. I think they were expecting, that's how we started with Amy eh. Since we start, ayoko bumaba yung discussion in terms of morale. I want to bring up the discussion. Can we increase? Hindi tayo bababa. Aakyat natin yung morale. Admiral, can you give us a pep talk before we close this episode?
Maybe the Filipino voters will surprise us on May 12.
Good surprise, you mean?
A good
Kasi
surprise.
medyo I'm waiting for that. Medyo 2010 ba ako naghintay?
So yun na lang. That's the best.
Yeah. Sa akin kasi, the major battle will be 2028.
Which is starting now. That's the problem.
Meron tayong 3 years na runway. Marami pa tayong pwedeng gawin. Kumpara dito sa midterm. Na parang nangyari na lang. No, ngayon medyo mahaba-haba.
Yeah.
At cup half full is yung mataas pa rin, from 75 to 90% ay aware ang mga Pilipino tungkol dito sa aggression ng China. Ang mahalaga lang ay i-consolidate yan, parang bibingka from the government side at mula sa people's movement side para lutuin yan, para ma-consolidate at ma-isolate, ma-demonize yung mga traidor, yung mga makapili
Right.
no, sa ating bansa na hindi pa masyadong nagagawa eh.
Yeah.
Hindi pa masyadong nagagawa. Dahil nga may kakulangan yung gobyerno na i-weaponize
Direction,
yan, no?
yeah.
So meron pang 3 years para ayusin yan at idikit yan sa isang kandidato o mga kandidato na dala yung ganyang klaseng narrative. No? Yung ganyang klaseng bagong patriotism. Na siyempre, hindi lang patriotism, kailangan lagyan ng laman. Paano mo ipaglalaban ng bansa mo kung yung PhilHealth mo ay zero? Paano mo ipaglalaban yung bansa mo kung ang self-rated poverty ay 63% or ang involuntary hunger is 28%? Kailangan give the Filipino people something to fight for, no?
Right.
As well as to live for. So patriotism na may laman. So yan at hindi yan kayang gawin lamang ng civil society. Kailangan major role dyan yung gobyerno. Diba? So kailangan yung gobyerno magbago rin eh. Hindi nila ma-harness yan, yung patriotism na yan, kung walang transformation ng gobyerno. So kailangan yung gobyerno na susunod ay hindi lamang patriotic, no? Kundi pro-people.
Whole of nation approach, that's it, Justice? I think that's the natural way forward.
Yeah, well, some bright spots. No, we are increasing our security relationship with other countries.
Diversifying, yeah.
We are about to sign a Visiting Forces agreement with New Zealand. I think Canada, UK, France would be next, and I think that would make up for the
Trump
yeah
effect.
for the Trump effect and
yeah.
for the aggression of China. We should expand this to other like-minded states, no? And on the point that you brought up, PhilHealth, no?
Yun, yan tayo.
Where we filed a case in the Supreme Court,
Yes.
and I think we'll get a good decision there. But it's not the only one. No? There's so many. We've questioned also the 2025 budget, but the government has to step up on this because the Marcos administration right now they can easily solve this problem because it's within their control. And why do we have to fight this in the Supreme Court? When it's so
Can be fixed on their own, yeah.
It's so logical that you have to give you have to allocate appropriation budget to the PhilHealth. I mean, that's the basic the basic health of the people.
Yes.
So they can fill up that part
Yeah,
of the
well,
glass themselves.
yes.
That's the prerogative they
Instead
have,
of putting it in a pork barrel,
Yeah.
because they got the money of PhilHealth, 60 billion, to put it in the pork barrel. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, we don't have to go through this pain of going to the Supreme Court, arguing. Common sense, you don't take away medicine from the poor.
This is the FOPA, which explains.
Kaya, maganda na 75 to 90% ng Pilipino ay conscious dito sa aggression ng China and are even willing to fight against them. That's higher purpose. Patriotism is a higher purpose. Ang problema, pagdating ng eleksyon, gut level pa rin ng mga tao. Sino pang bibigay sa kanila ng ayuda?
Sure, malaki ang vote buying ngayon, grabe, di ba?
Sino ang mag-i-invoke ng pataas na krimen, no? Para yung kanilang mga takot ay magamit. So, yun yung problema eh. Yung mga tao are very primal, no? Higher purpose, yes, patriotic sila. This is a new kind of patriotism. Pero pagdating ng mga eleksyon, katulad ng midterm, ay ang titignan nila sikmura. Diba? Yung titignan nila sikmura.
Which is understandable,
Which is a primal concern.
given everything.
So, kailangan punuan yon ng gobyerno na role, na function yon. Paano ka magiging masusustain yung patriotism mo kung hindi mo alam kung saan ka kukuha ng pambili ng gamot doon sa inaapoy na lagnat na 3-year-old na anak mo? Parang gano'n
exactly.
No? Madadamage yung patriotism dahil sa kakulangan sa sikmura.
On that very gut level reminder, and like, there's 3 years pa, and at least what we're doing is we're pointing out points of strength, the good and the bad and the ugly and the bad could be still fixed, and this should be a whole of nation approach. Thank you so much for this all-star panel ahead of the 2025 elections, which in many ways is really the set up for the big one to come in 2028. Maraming salamat, Justice Carpio, on that. I'm not sure that was a half full, may half full punch back ang nangyari, but I will take that, Justice. Thank you so much. Sir Ronald, thank you for being very well behaved, and in the next episode, mag-ano na tayo. And Admiral, thank you so much for, I didn't call you Justice or Secretary or anything. Admiral, thank you so much for sharing your time as always, Admiral. Yeah, and your operation, they always say amateurs do strategy, real experts do logistics, right? So every time I go like blah, 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 and then say, pero paano mangyari? Ito lang yung ganyan, di ba? That's why I love having also Admiral with us. But I really appreciated Justice Carpio, you telling us that Ronald will get away with his libelous comments here. Kasi kahapon takot na takot yung mga guests. Magpakamatay na yung isa, di ba? On that note, thank you very much, guys, for joining this latest episode of FYI. Medyo, of course, it's still within my own podcast universe. Marami tayong mga Hydra. But I hope people were not only educated enough, but agitated enough also to make the right vote come this election. Maraming salamat and talk to you soon.